What's up, guys? I hope you're doing well. In this video, I just wanted to give my 2 cents on why I believe that Tesla should not be advertising. So I think recently there's been a lot of hoopla about why Tesla should be advertising, why they shouldn't. And I've seen, particularly in the Twitter community, just a lot of back and forth regarding, hey, Tesla definitely at this point, because of how big they are as a company, they should and must be advertising to continue to get the word out and continue to grow demand for the vehicles. So I just wanted to walk over a few points of why I think at this point in time, it's really not necessary for Tesla to advertise. It's probably more of a nice to have, considering that if they chose to, it probably would mean peanuts compared to the rest of their OpEx and how much they're investing in R&D. However, really, I wanted to dive into just a few points as to why it might not be necessary at this point. So let's go ahead and take a look. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll jump into what some of the higher level criticisms are and effectively what my response is to it. So the first one is, why would Tesla lower prices on their vehicles when they can just run ads? So obviously, most recently, we've seen that Tesla has been reducing the price of their vehicles. Obviously, the Model 3 has gone the largest amount of decreases. Model Y has also been decreased significantly to where it's become a lot more attractive to want to actually get into the game now and buy your own Tesla. However, my first response and immediate response to that is that the goal isn't to try to make the fattest margins or the most revenue at this point in time. The goal is to try to really tangibly accelerate the world's transition to sustainable transport. It's to try to get as many vehicles as possible into people's hands and start actually making a dent into the CO2 emissions that are being caused by ICE vehicles. And so at this point, yes, from a financial standpoint, it would make a lot of sense. Hey, you're spending a fraction of your OpEx into advertising. It would get you more eyeballs. It would get you more interest, more demand. Then it would cost you to lower your price and take a significant revenue and maybe even a margin hit. That's still TBD, depending on whether or not we see on April 19th when Tesla releases their financials, if they're actually able to maintain their margins because they're lowering costs. So anyway, that's a whole nother story. But for now, basically, they're taking a revenue hit. Why do that when you can just pull out fairly inexpensive ads? So again, to reemphasize on this particular criticism as to why lower prices when you can just run fairly cheap ads, and it's to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable transport, not to try to make the most money you can make at this point in time, considering the macro environment that we're going through. It's really to try to accelerate and get as many cars, as many Teslas in people's hands as feasibly possible. Okay, another one of the criticisms that I've seen, so point number 2, is that a company as large as Tesla is, another comparatively similar company as far as market cap goes, Apple, obviously they're 2 to 3 times larger than Tesla, but nevertheless, if Apple, being one of the largest companies in the world, is running ads, why can't Tesla? And my response to that is, well, Apple actually has the necessary supply chain in place to meet demand. So think about it. If you were to place an order on an iPhone or a MacBook right now, would you want to wait 4 to 5 months or even half a year to get your phone, get your MacBook, get your iPad? Absolutely not. I would want to have it within a reasonable amount of time, whether that's a week, 2 weeks, or even just go to any Apple store nearby and pick it up right then and there. So same thing with Tesla. Tesla is currently working on scaling up their production so that as demand grows, so does their supply. And so if they were to run ads, of course that would tick up that would tick up demand, at least to some extent. I think that can be said. And the problem isn't trying to expand demand, it's trying to meet that demand. And so with the capacity that all factories have right now at this point, which is about 2 million per year run rate, can that sustainably meet the demand necessary? Perhaps, maybe not. But we all saw within the last 12 to 24 months how wait times for Teslas were extended out to 4, 5, 6 months on some particular variants. And so I think Tesla doesn't want to re-experience that, in which there's a sudden influx of demand, but not enough supply to meet that demand. And suddenly you're having folks wait 4, 5, 6+ months, sometimes even a year for a particular variant because Tesla isn't able to make enough vehicles to meet that demand. And so that's one of the differences. You have companies who have solid established supply chains that can meet demand at any given point in time, whereas Tesla is still trying to scale up that production so that as that demand organically continues to grow, they can meet the supply necessary to satisfy that demand. Okay, so point number 3, competition is coming for Tesla. So my response to that is the Super Bowl ads. So not this past Super Bowl, but last year's Super Bowl, so 2022, all the legacy OEMs were running EV commercials that cost probably tens of millions of dollars for a 30-second slot in which they were advertising automobiles that weren't even being produced yet. And so I think as those ads stirred up the interest in EVs and wanting to look up all these legacy OEM EVs and seeing that, hey, they're not going to be available for another year, year and a half, 2 years in some cases, naturally that led folks to a Tesla website in which they saw, hey, why do I have to wait 2 years when I can order a Tesla and get it within a month? And so there was a huge uptick in Tesla interest on Google Trends. I wasn't able to find it, but I'm sure if you were to dig around, you would see that Tesla had a spike in interest on Google Trends last year's Super Bowl, not particularly in this most recent Super Bowl, but it actually helped Tesla gain more orders as a result of that. And I think they even stated in the earnings call after that Super Bowl, which would have been Q1 close of 2022, in which they highlighted that it actually benefited them because of the interest that led to Tesla's website, because they actually have the ability to fulfill orders within a more reasonable amount of time. So to reiterate, the competition, sure, I welcome the competition. We need as many players in the game to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy, to sustainable transport. However, I think right now, the only game in town is Tesla, and everybody else is just playing catch up. So if anything, any competition running ads is probably going to benefit Tesla in the short to medium term. Okay, so point number 4, how will Tesla continue to get the word out? And my response to that is, 1, Tesla has some of the most loyal owners that I've seen for any company. You can make a case almost for Apple. I myself have to admit, back in the day, I think it was 2014, I believe, I was actually one of those Apple fanboys that slept outside an Apple store waiting for that Friday morning release and being one of the first folks to get the new iPhone. Sure, you can kind of say there was a lot of buzz around Apple back then and a lot of fan loyalty. I think you don't have that today, but you do have it for Tesla. You see so many owners that have their own clubs, that have their own YouTube channels, their own Twitter accounts. They're constantly on Twitter Spaces, out and about everywhere, just always talking about how great Tesla is and how great the vehicle is, the experience is, the fulfilling ownership of having a Tesla. So in essence, Tesla owners are brand ambassadors, so to speak. They're talking to their friends, talking to their relatives, showing them their car, taking them out and showing them how great FSD is, how great the technology is, how Teslas are, if not one of the best, the actual best and safest vehicle that you can drive today. And so all these different factors of owners literally just having their friends and relatives continue to perpetuate how great the experience of owning a Tesla is. If anything, I don't know of any other company, even Apple, that can have that claim to fame. I haven't heard anybody talk to me about how great their iPhone is, because it's a dime a dozen now. You just see them everywhere. Everybody knows how great they are, and they've sort of plateaued as far as their excitement and innovation, so to speak. And so I think that Tesla's technological advantage will continue to exponentially grow, and more folks are going to become fanatics of not only the brand, the technology, but just overall becoming a part of this larger community. Okay, and then to add to that, Twitter. Now, of course, I think a lot of folks are going to right off the bat think of like how Elon bought Twitter for $40 billion. So effectively, you can almost say that he spent $40 billion-ish for ad space. One response I would have for that is that Elon and Tesla already had a Twitter account that they were pretty regularly posting on. I'm sure that at the time, Elon and Tesla combined between their accounts had tens of millions of followers that would regularly see these posts. And leading into Elon, I think the saying goes that any publicity is good publicity, whether it's negative, whether it's positive. Elon, of course, I think the whole planet knows who he is. And so him having surpassed, I think recently, the 130-ish million follower account, passing President Obama and now being the most followed person on Twitter, rightfully so. I think he even has an incredibly large audience that he constantly retweets any Tesla postings. And of course, he's also pushing how great Tesla is, how great its products are, and really the trajectory that Tesla is headed on. That would be my response to how Tesla's going to continue to get the word out. In today's day and age, nobody is relying on cable television anymore. We now live in a day and age where you're either streaming or you're scrolling on your social media, whether it's TikTok, of course, Twitter, whatever it might be. And so even when you're streaming, you're subscribed to a service, very likely for the most part, that doesn't have too many ads or commercials in it. So conventional ways of advertising on TV, I feel like isn't the most efficient way to try to expand your market, expand your demand any longer. So Elon being on Twitter and more folks continually using Twitter more often, I can say definitely speak from experience that I've used Twitter more often. Whether it's Twitter, whether it's YouTube, Tesla and Elon have the avenues now to advertise in a very economical manner, i.e. free, because they're just posting videos and pictures of how great the vehicles and the products are that they offer. So anyways, to conclude, I'm not saying that Tesla will never advertise. I'm sure that at some point down the road, as they've really matured in the market, i.e. getting to 20 million vehicles, that's when they probably will at some point get into advertising a little bit more conventionally, so to speak. Who knows? But I think right now it's just not the time. Like I said, they don't have the capacity to fulfill as much as demand as they might be able to obtain or expand their market. And so because they don't want folks waiting 6 to 12 months for their vehicle to actually get delivered, I think right now is just a good time to continue to pump out production. There's already sufficient enough demand that they can sort of meet the demand with the supply that they're outputting, i.e. 2 million run rate right now. So I think at some point it might be necessary or even prudent to get into advertising. But for now, I think they're in a good position. And then also keep in mind, they've gotten this far without advertising pretty much at all. And so Tesla getting to a 650, and at some point, if you remember, they were at a $1 trillion plus market cap. They got to this point without having to advertise. Their cars were mobile billboards, so to speak. They were advertising themselves. Of course, now with so many more owners, word of mouth is already causing more folks to want to get Teslas. I've rented a Tesla in the past, and if anything has backfired, I thought I would get it out of my system. If anything, I want a Tesla that much more. And so that's really my takeaway, my 2 cents. I think I went much longer than I thought I would. I was trying to make this a super short video, but you kind of get fired up when you're talking about Tesla. But anyway, takeaway is I don't think it's necessary for them to advertise at the moment. They have plenty of demand. Their cars are walking or driving billboards, so to speak. And they are still ramping production to try to hopefully at some point have a little bit more supply than there might be demand. Hopefully demand continues to expand as they tap into new markets, as they eventually release a 25K-ish vehicle that can really reach the masses. And so at some point it might be necessary to get into advertising to reach those markets. But for now, I think as Tesla continues to grow and expand production, I think they're in a good position to not really dabble too much into that. So anyway, those were just my 2 cents. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will catch you guys on the next one.